If you want to hear about St. Louis, tune in to the Bucket List Show weekly. Hear what Marissa and Luke say. It drops every Wednesday. Got a dope new guest every single week. Buckle up for the ride. Who's it gonna be? Who's on the show today? They rep St. Louis. What to do in the loo on a late night, or maybe what to do on a date night. Yeah, Bucket List has you covered. They know what's going on. What's going on? They'll give you, hey, 18 different things to do, or 19 if you need one more to choose. Yeah, this city is a place we call home. A place we call home, yeah.
What's up, St. Louis? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the STL Bucket List Show. I'm your host, Marissa Farrell.
And I am your other host, Lucas Farrell. And it's about to be your last week of school. So you're going to be on summer break.
Yeah, I am.
So we're recording episode 66 here. We got a very special episode with you today. But before we get into that, I want to talk about my partners over at the Regional Arts Commission of St. Louis. They're the largest public funder of arts and art programming right here in the city of St. Louis. Go out this summer. Go see Shakespeare in the Park. Go to the Muni.
We'll be there.
Go to Jazz St. Louis. There's so many small organizations in the St. Louis area that are doing great things. And then, of course, our friends over at Four Hands, Matt in the back, over at Half Coast Studios, and our newest partners over at Mattress Direct. Everybody sleeps somewhere, so everybody needs a great mattress. And when you're an entrepreneur like us, it's really hard to get the right sleep you need. So, finding that right bed. There's 14 area locations, and they're celebrating 90 years this year. So. Kick it off. All right. Well, thank you for being patient. We have a very special episode today. It is a business in the Grove. It's a non-for-profit. We have Lacy, and your last name Cagle.
That's right.
Cagle. Well, great to meet you. Thank you for coming on.
I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
If you could tell our guests just a little bit about what you do, tell them about
City Greens Market.
Yeah, sorry, I messed up.
City Greens Market. Yeah.
Tell them a little bit about City Greens Market. Tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of your mission statement.
I'm the executive director at City Greens Market. We are a nonprofit grocery store in the Grove. We actually started out as a program of another organization in 2008 and became our own nonprofit in 2016. So we've been around for a while.
Wow.
Our mission is to combat food insecurity while also focusing on local food and supporting the local food ecosystem here in St. Louis. So we do that through sliding scale membership model. Our memberships are based upon household income. So it's anywhere from $25 a year to $25 a month, depending on your household income. And then when you are a member, you get food at cost. We subsidize all of our food. We work with local farmers as much as possible, and we work with a lot of local vendors to bring food choice to the Grove. When we started out in 2008, it was a food desert. There was not much development in the Grove, and there were women whose families were affected by food insecurity, food apartheid. And they decided to do something about it. So they created a market in the basement of St. Cronan's church building, and we grew from there. The Grove has developed a lot in the past few years, but it's still a food desert, actually, for most people who live there. And so we still provide a really needed service for a lot of folks who don't have access to food or have very low access to food. Maybe they don't have good public transportation or whatever it might be, as well as a lot of other folks in the Grove who could go somewhere else but love to just walk down the street and shop locally at a shop where they know people and know the farmers.
Wow. So starting off in 2008, at what point was there a decision for the group to pivot to what it is now? That's 8 years of a difference in the change. So how did that come about?
So it was a gradual process, as most things are. First of all, so they were operating in that basement for that long, a couple days a week to several days a week. They actually started out as a CSA program, working with local farmers and writing grants for that.
What does that stand for, CSA?
Community Supported Agriculture.
Okay.
So they were working with local farmers to have boxes of food for folks. And that was great. There was a lot of diversity there. They could get lots of good food. But it was for a lot of folks who were already relying on emergency food services, it was kind of the same thing. They weren't having any choice in the food they were getting. And that was kind of the whole point. They didn't want to just be able to get processed food, for example, but they didn't want to just get food that other people had chosen for them that they didn't like or their families wouldn't eat. And so they moved to that market model of people being able to make choices about whether they wanted sweet potatoes or they wanted collard greens or, whatever it might be. And then in 2013, we actually moved to Manchester, to our current location, even though we were still actually under another organization.
Mm-hmm.
We had been funded by Catholic Charities in that organization. And in 2016, Catholic Charities made quite a bit of changes and stopped funding our program.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a mad dash to
What are we gonna
incorporate as a
do?
nonprofit. So still have great connections with Midtown Community Services, who was our parent organization, but became our own nonprofit in 2016 and have been since.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, you guys have been really doing it starting from the ground, like literally from the seed to sprouting into this amazing organization and having to pivot. Like that was probably a really scary time for the staff because they're like, okay, well, we lost all this money that we used to help other people. But I want to hear a little bit more about your story and like what led you to the organization. How long have you been there? And then maybe touch a little bit about what you were doing before and
I'm
a little bit
curious
of your
about that,
upbringing as well.
So even though the organization has a very long history, I've actually only been there for 2 years.
Oh.
So I am a part of that long evolution as well. We actually were pretty much entirely volunteer-led for a really long time. So those mamas who called themselves the Midtown Mamas, because that was another program at Midtown Community Services, they were the ones who founded us. They were the ones who were experiencing food insecurity. Their families were experiencing the problems with that. So diet-related illnesses, for example, like diabetes. And they were the ones who kept running that market for a long time just on a volunteer basis. When we moved over to Manchester is when we kind of first started to hire our first employees, but we were still largely volunteer-led. And it's really in the past 4 years that we started to actually pay more people to do the work. So that's been like a transition that you might see a lot of nonprofits go through, honestly, from that kind of grassroots program to becoming a more established organization. And so 2 years ago, they had never had an official executive director before. And so City Green's board decided they needed to, and they sent out a call, and I actually got hired as part of a team. Yeah, so I actually co-own a consulting business, BlackRock Consulting, and me and 2 of our team members actually applied for the executive director position as a team because City Greens was not offering very much money, and they needed a lot of help, and we were like, this is the best way we could do this.
Yeah.
So we came on. I had team members who were helping with like fundraising and with local food connections. And then 6 months later, they went on to other things. And I was like, I actually really love this. And so the board invited me to stay on as the full-time executive director. And that's what I've been doing since then. So again, another multiple
And this was
steps.
2021.
Transition.
So this was like when they were going through the probably pandemic transitions.
Exactly.
And like it was even harder to find
How
food.
how did that impact the business and the organization? Was the pandemic like getting people the resources that they need, like, and especially closing down shops? Like, did you guys have to close? Like, what was that like?
We did. We actually closed the store itself for over a year. So people would order online or call in their orders and then come pick them up.
Okay.
So
Did you
that's
guys?
what we did.
You didn't do deliveries or anything like that.
We did deliveries in a very small time frame.
Yeah.
Again, very small.
Yeah, right. When
organization.
everyone was trying to figure out like what to do and how things are going to work.
Yeah. So when we opened the store back up and started to and we had a lot of programs that we were doing too before that. So we weren't just a grocery store. We were doing nutrition programs and cooking classes, and
Wow.
kids hung out there, and we had 3-on-3 basketball tournaments and stuff like that. And all of that shut down, and we were just doing food
Yeah.
that
Pick
people
up.
could pick up.
Yeah.
So when we came out of that, that was when they decided to hire the executive director. Of like, okay, the board's been doing a lot of this. We've had a lot of volunteers. We really need to pay
Structure.
someone to help
Sure.
us create structure.
Wow. So did you, the BlackRock Consulting, which I feel like I've heard of that. So are you still involved with that, or did you kind of just move over really for your core focus with this?
Yeah, I'm still involved with that. I think all of us who are involved currently are part-time. We're doing other things, but also doing that. That was a group of people who really wanted to make a difference in St. Louis and felt like that in the institutions they were in or the administrations they got hired in, there was only so much change they could make before that switch happened, and then they weren't able to do anything. And they wanted to commit to longer term change. And so BlackRock Consulting still exists to make St. Louis a better place for all of its residents. So we're still doing stuff.
And
too.
how long were you doing that before you guys decided, like, so they put this call out, they were looking for volunteers, but also they were looking for just like more community partners to like help them when they put that call out?
They were actually, it was a call for an executive director.
Oh,
They were
okay.
hiring an executive director. But as a lot of nonprofits experience, they didn't have a whole lot of money to offer, and it was going to be really hard for them to find what they were looking for with the money that they had to offer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we were like, why don't we do it like this? 3 people working on this. We're all working part-time and being able to actually make a living wage doing other things, and also be able to use our abilities to build capacity.
Yeah.
And they were like, that sounds great.
They're like 3 for 1? Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's smart. And that's like that freelance agency model that a lot of people are using now. They're hiring consulting firms because they get access to a team instead of just one person. So that's awesome. So you loved it. You started working there. What is your role now? Like, I know it's the executive director, but that is just
What
the
does
name
that look
title.
like for you?
You sound like you do a lot and you help with stuff. So tell us a little bit about your day to day, a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So everyone on staff does a lot. That's the nature of nonprofits as well. And, like hard to keep staff on. So like we're always being flexible as possible for what's needed to be done. But I do a lot of the fundraising for the organization. So either that's grant writing, as well as engaging community partners, trying to get other folks involved either through monetary donations or volunteer work or just kind of larger programmatic partnerships. So what we're doing is unique in some ways in that we are both looking at local food and trying to focus on local farmers and also focusing on food security. A lot of times those things don't go hand in hand because buying from smaller farmers, it might just be more expensive because you don't have that kind of economy of scale, right? So, but there are lots of folks who are doing very similar things with us in St. Louis. And so it's really cool to have partners working in other parts of the region. So Be Well Cafe and Farmers Market in Hyde Park, they're just starting their farmers market for the season on Wednesday. Marsh a co-op in Carondelet, a Red Circle in Ferguson. They're creating a community-owned grocery store soon. So we have all these partners and we're like, okay, how can we work together instead of competing for resources, which often happens with nonprofits? It's like, how can we pool our resources and apply for grants together or create programs together? So I'm doing a lot of that work, which is so cool because what City Greens does is really, really important. And there's only so much we can do for those larger systems as this small organization. But when we start working across the whole food system and then beyond the food system, working with folks who are working on housing or who are working on homelessness, for example, then there's so much more we can do to make the world that we want to see. And that's a huge part of my job too.
Beautiful. So you were talking earlier about some of the programs that you guys had to shut down due to the pandemic. Have you been able to pick some of those back up?
Several of them we have picked back up, and there's some of them that we just still don't have the capacity for. So what we do right now is that every month during the growing season, we have a Meet Your Farmer event. So we bring in local farmers.
That's awesome.
Most of the time it's farmers that are actually selling at the store, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's like somebody who's got a community garden and they're looking for volunteers. Sometimes it's just like a new farm that's just established and they haven't even had food for us to sell yet. But we're like, hey, let's let people know about what you're doing. And then those are also kind of like mini festivals. So we usually have music or food to eat or, like St. Louis Public Libraries there to give out resources or whatever. So we do that once a month. And that's really cool because you can actually meet local growers, find out what they're doing, find out ways to get involved or whatever it might be. And then we do some workshops. We do every so often like a gardening workshop or nutrition workshop, but it's definitely more one-off than it used to be. We used to have them a lot. And we're building back up the capacity there, but it's, it's a work in progress.
It takes time.
I would go to a gardening. I keep saying I'm really into gardening right now. Like I want to be able to do it. So I would go to a workshop.
We're right down the street from you guys, and like we need to go up there. Like I said, she's a teacher, so she'll be on summer break, and like we'll love to come up to some of those events. Yes. But there's something that we're noticing in just the restaurants that we go to, and like this farm to table experience of like knowing the farmer. And Schnucks is even putting like pictures of the local farmers up there. Like, have you seen a shift of people being more conscious, regardless of their income, of shopping with you? Obviously you have resources for people that are on lower income, but also people who just that live in the neighborhood. So are people like interested more? Like, are they talking about it more? like using that kind of farm to like shopping through the farmers? I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say yes. Context for me is I did grow up in Southern Illinois, so not in St. Louis, but close by. And then I lived in Portland, Oregon for 7 years, where the growing season is 10 months out of the year and everyone cares about local food. And it was just like so
A norm.
focused on that, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And then I came back here. And so it was a big change for me. And it's harder here. Like, you have a lot of farmers here, but a lot of times it's large agribusinesses that are growing acres and acres of feed corn or soy or whatever. And so it was for a long time a lot harder to know what local farmers were growing produce that you might eat. It's called specialty crops in the industry, but it's what you would actually eat as produce. And I definitely have seen that change over the last 10 years since I've been in St. Louis. I would also say that local food feels a lot more affordable now than it used to since the pandemic and all the different disruptions in the kind of supply chain.
Interesting.
So a good example for this is, we are subsidizing our food, but local meat, for example, when it's local, humane, organic, whatever, it's never going to be able to compete with Aldi prices, right? Like there's just so much more intensive farming that goes into that and like the scale and everything. But our eggs, we sell eggs for $4 a dozen. That is a price we've been able to keep for years now. And it is the cheapest price in town. Like you go to Aldi and you get conventional like factory farm eggs for $4 a dozen. So the kind of difference in price has really changed in the past few years as food has continued to get more and more expensive. And so eggs and milk and produce, fresh produce are all far more reasonable, or at least in people's minds, it's more reasonable to shop local than it used to be.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So tell us a little bit more about the membership. I know we kind of breezed through it. So the membership is open to anyone. We can get a membership.
How can you get the membership first off? Like what resources are there for people to actually get one? And then what does that program look like?
So getting membership is super easy. You can actually go to our website, stlcitygreens.org, and there is a tab you can click on to become a member. You can do a monthly membership or an annual membership. And you can also do that in the store itself. And you don't have to prove anything. There's like a form you fill out where you say like, this is what I make. Here's the membership level I would be. But it really is us believing you, trusting you. There are lots of folks who might not be able to shop with us as regularly for whatever reason. Like they might have before the pandemic, they don't or whatever, but they still are members because they care and that's like kind of their way of donating to us. And then there are lots of folks who come every week,
Sure.
So it's super easy to become a member. You can actually shop with us even if you're not a member, but it's kind of like a 30% markup.
Yeah.
So everyone's getting things at cost if you're a member, and then you're paying that 30% markup if you're not a member.
Sure.
But for some things, it's still really affordable. I know every time I go into another grocery store, I kind of check out to see what prices are. And I know the other day I was at Schnucks and there was Dogtown Pizza there, and it was like $8 and something. And I was like, oh, even our non-member price is cheaper than that, So
you can get it for $7.95 or
Exactly.
$6 or whatever it might be. So you guys do sell stuff like that then?
We do have, it's a very small
lot of
store,
local
so we
brands.
don't have everything. But I know I have a 2.5-year-old, and I care very much about local food, and I really like making like fresh, whole foods.
Yes.
And sometimes I just need a frozen pizza to get through the night.
That's right. We always get one good frozen item when we
Sometimes
grocery
you just
shop.
need it after a long day of writing grants. You're like, I am not cooking today.
Exactly,
I've been
yeah.
writing for 12 hours straight. Like,
And I
I'm
mean, think
done.
about that for
Excited.
farmers. Like sometimes farmers are working till like 8 p.m. and they're like, oh, okay, now I have to make food, unless if somebody didn't do it for them or something. So yeah, it was like frozen pizza. We've got boxed mac and cheese. We've got frozen Impossible burgers and stuff like that. And then also a lot of local produce and
Local
dairy
meat, like, stuff
and
like
meats,
that.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever have farmers come to you, like reach out to you to be a part of the market?
We do actually, yeah, and we also reach out to farmers when we find new ones too.
Yeah.
So we are always looking for new farmers. I think right now it's great. We got a lot of greens currently because it's the season. So it's always nice when you can get somebody who's growing a little on the early end or on the later end of the season, or growing something that is more difficult to get. But yeah, we've got a lot of selection right now, including organic local strawberries and rhubarb and a ton of really good greens.
We just got some strawberries too. It's
We
strawberry
did.
season.
Strawberry season. We've been eating salad every night. 'Cause lots of greens. I'm like trying all these different like concoctions of salad, and yeah.
So when the local farmer basically will sell it to you at their cost, and then you just replicate that right back to the customer if they're a member.
That's
so
right.
These members, like, let's say they make 6 figures, they'll be on that higher scale of that scale, but they're still getting the cost. So if they shop enough, you're actually not only supporting direct local farmers as well, supporting your guys' mission, but they're also getting a great deal on produce.
Exactly. And what's really cool is, so we're open 5 days a week. So, you know, if a farmer has to go to a farmer's market, they have to bring their food with them. They have to make sure that it's not getting too hot or wilted from the sun or whatever. And then there's usually farmer's market fees where they have to pay a fee. And so usually you can actually get food for cheaper at City Greens than you can at a farmer's market because they're not having to pay vendor fees. And the farmer does a delivery once a week, and then they get to go back to farming and we sell their food for them. So it's a pretty good deal. We specialize in working with a lot of local farmers. So, we work with local farmers, but small farmers.
Yeah.
So we're working with some larger farms, but we also work with farms that may not have the capacity, the bulk to sell to Schnucks, for example, but they can sell to a store like us. It's a great way for them to get their name out there and to start to build a brand for themselves. And, you know, most of the time when farmers become farmers, they don't really want to do branding and marketing. So it's nice when you can like have some kind of help.
Just have a couple wholesale, like, hey, I dropped this off, boom, done.
Exactly.
They're like, I don't want you to take my picture. I don't want like a thing up there. Like, you know.
I just want to be in the dirt and like grow things.
Yeah. And I want to have a successful business for my family. And it's great that like, and I'm sure that they seek it out and that probably means a lot for them too. But you're right about the farmer's market because they're sitting up there. They're setting up at 4 or 5 in the morning and they're sitting there. And these people probably aren't salespeople. They're just, you know, they're farmers. They're
Here's my.
I mean, it stuff sells itself basically. Like, but you know, they can just drop it off and that is very nice. And it's so cool because like, I've driven by you guys so many times and like it's just that awareness. So what's your guys' next steps? What are you doing for awareness? What can we help you with? What can the city of St. Louis help you with? Like what's your goals this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing I would say is like I would love for you and your listeners to know that we do a double up food bucks program. So if anybody is buying fresh produce using their EBT SNAP benefits, whether they're a member or not, we participate in a nationwide program where they get up to $50 worth of produce for $25. So they get half off local produce anytime they shop with us using their SNAP benefits. So that is an incredible deal that anybody can participate in who's using SNAP. And we're doing a lot of outreach right now to like, one, let people know that we're participating in that program, and which we have been for several years now. And two, to get feedback from folks about what would make it easier for them to shop with us. You know, like what, you know, if we don't have a parking lot, for example, you have to use the like pay public parking here. So it's not going to be convenient for a lot of folks. That's why our vision is that every neighborhood would have like a small, neighborhood farmers focused grocery store.
Yeah.
But for the folks who we can be convenient for, how can we meet their needs better? So that's something we're doing right now, is that kind of outreach and community engagement after the pandemic, kind of
establishing things.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah.
We do a Sunday sale, so we're open from Wednesday to Sunday, and then we're closed Monday and Tuesdays. So on Sundays, in the last 2 hours of the day, 4 to 6, we do a 40% off produce sale because we want to sell as much as possible before we're closed for 2 days.
Yeah.
Anybody can participate in that. So those are both really, really good deals.
That's great.
Really good to know. That's a bucket list thing to put on the page. Be like, hey, did you know?
Yeah.
You know, because it is like we've been going to the grocery store lately and it gets more and more expensive. And we're just a young couple that's
it's
like.
Just us two. I'm like, how are we spending this
Yeah.
much for just the two of us? It's wild.
Yeah.
And then the third thing I would say is, we're focusing on food security. We're focusing on food access. And what I would say about that is like just literally having options for folks opposed to just like the corner stores and what might be there. But I would say what we really focus on is food sovereignty. And that's the idea that people have a right to be able to control their food supply. So for us, that looks like supporting local farmers now and so that they can be successful in the future. That means that we support other organizations who are focusing on local food or focusing on farmers, focusing on food security, and that we're also investing in things that help people have the skills and the education and the access they need for long-term health and empowerment. And so I think a lot of times organizations are just focusing on one part of that system, and that's good. I mean, like we can't all do it all, right? But we're really trying to either focus on more or connect with other folks who are focusing on more so that we can actually make long-term change. So that it's not just folks continuing to have to rely upon emergency food services because they don't have any other option. If there are more supply chain disruptions, which there will be either from global pandemics or climate change or whatever it might be, how can we keep investing in our local food system so that we make it as resilient as possible and are better able to equip whatever might come at us?
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, absolutely. Can people still, do you guys still do the pickup? Like where people can still come? Like,
we do. Yeah, people can
if
still
they
order
really need
online.
to.
Yeah, or some people still call us and be like, oh, do you have ham hocks or, whatever they're looking for specifically. So we still do that too.
Okay.
That's cool.
And then what about, so a big part, like something we focus on with Bucket List is our Bucket List Gives initiative, which is basically highlighting nonprofits and then drawing action to that. So is there a way that like our listeners or followers can also get involved and be supportive? Like do you guys do volunteer things like
Yes,
that?
we still rely very heavily on volunteers. So we have volunteers each day of the week who might even just come in and help us with restocking stuff. Most of the time it's folks who are helping us to try to reduce food waste. So we might have produce that like greens that are wilted. And so like they're still totally edible, but they don't look nice enough to sell anymore. So we have volunteers who come in and they like help us process those. So we cook them down, we blanch them, we freeze them, whatever it might be to keep that food available for people. So we have people who do that every day of the week. We have people who help us with our little herb garden. And then we have events and people help us with our events. So there's always opportunities to volunteer. We actually do free memberships for anybody who volunteers at least 1 hour a week. So that's another great way if you're just like, don't have that money to like pay that monthly fee, but you want to be involved or you just really love giving back to your community. Volunteering is a great way to get involved with us.
Right. And even beyond the monthly fee, is there like a way to give monthly? Like, do you have like a monthly option for
donations?
Yeah.
We do.
Okay.
Yes. That's also on our website,
Okay.
stlcitygreens.org.
She's like, I'm selling today, baby. Let's go. No, but for real though, like it is like once it's that automated thing, is like there's organizations that we love, and it's like once it's automated, then it's like, okay, even if it is $25 or $50, that stuff all adds up for what you guys do, and you need that. You
Absolutely.
vitally need that. Because, like you said, I mean, with you being the executive director and then all these other volunteers, the thing about volunteers is it's up and down sometimes. It's like, oh, it's summer or it's around the holidays.
I was going to say, is there a time where you feel like it's like really high and people are, the help is increasing and then it kind of drops or
Yeah,
ebbs
we're
and
really
flows?
lucky to have a couple of teachers who require some community service or volunteer hours from their students. And so when school is in session, we usually are pretty good with volunteers. It's pretty awesome. It's always great to see new people come in the door and get to meet them over the course of a few months. In the summertime, people are on vacation or not as willing to commit because they want to be outside enjoying the summer. So I feel like summertime and over holidays is often like important times for us to make sure we have volunteers.
Sure. That's very good to know. Yeah.
What is I'm sure you guys talk about this in your team meetings, but like what is the long-term vision for you? Is it the neighborhood markets, or do you guys have a specific, like it doesn't even have to be a year thing, like 5-10 years? I know that's really hard to think about, but like what would be your idea of, you being successful with the organization? Like what do you guys see for the future?
Yeah. So things that are kind of in process right now, I think, but continuing on. So one I said is our vision that like every neighborhood in the St. Louis area could have some sort of like nonprofit or community-owned grocery store that was focused on making food accessible and affordable to people and that was supporting local farmers. We are a part of a couple of networks. So Known and Grown STL is a local food brand, and they do some really cool mentorship with local farmers, focusing on sustainable farming. And we have a kind of local food buyers or food retailers group there. So getting those connections again, so that we can all like know what other people are doing, be able to support them and cheer them on and tell people about, oh yeah, Be Well has a farmer's market tomorrow. You should go there. Oh, you're not in our neighborhood, but you're in this neighborhood. Here's who's doing something there, you know?
Very good. Yeah.
I think that making those connections is really, really important for me. I also think that for us, there's a lot of systemic reasons why Black farmers in St. Louis have a harder time than white farmers in getting land or being able to like get loans they need to just even have like business cards or a website or whatever. And so whatever way that we can support Black farmers and women farmers and non-binary farmers is always also really important to us. And, you know, like, you have those farmers who like, yeah, they have acres and acres of corn and soy, but those folks who are doing more specialty crops have pest issues or rain issues or whatever, where it's going to be, they're not going to have that crop insurance in the same way that like large scale folks do. And so whatever ways we can support them to make sure that they're being resilient through all of those changes is really that kind of long-term food security that we're looking at.
I love that. I love that you guys do this full circle. It's not just, it's bigger. It's more than a grocery store, which it says on your website, more than a grocery store, which I love that because I just love that term more than, and LeBron has it, more than an athlete. Like all these people have that, like it's more than just sports. It's more than just a grocery store. Like you guys are doing this like from literally the farmers, and I love the fact.
Support all parts of life and people of life and communities. And that I think is a great reflection of, I think, what St. Louis is and what we're trying to be and supporting our neighbors and like lifting each other up rather than being competitive. So
yeah, you know, I feel like there's like this idea like St. Louis is full of possibility, right? Like you could say like, oh, we might be like not living up to it. Like they're, you know, cynical, but like there is so much possibility here. And so what are the ways that we can do to kind of really support that possibility and support connections? And I think for most of us in the last few years, like we've kind of like reductionism, this idea that like things are just this thing and nothing more is not as in vogue as it used to be. People see the connections. They see the connections between themselves and other people and ecosystems and all kinds of things, right? And so how can we be using that to lift everyone up together?
And it's a circle. It's like the farmer goes into the neighborhood, and then the single mom that lives down the street goes to, you know, the market. And it's just like this circle of, you know, and it's just beautiful. Like the whole entire thing that you just talked about with like, I love how you explained it there, and we'll probably clip that and send it to you because that's going to be a good little clip to share on social media as well. But it is the STL bucket list show. So the STL bucket list means, you know, to us is different than what it means to you. You have your own idea of a St. Louis bucket list, but we like to ask our guests a question, and I might be putting you on the spot, but what would you say? Like you went to Portland for for a while, but when you're, let's say when people come in town or when you have a family day, like what are some of your bucket list spots in St. Louis? Or it's
Monday and you're not working, or I don't know.
Well, not you have a 2.5-year-old, so she's working every day all day.
Yes, absolutely. The City Museum is really unique. It's so much fun. I think it's fun for almost every age. And so that's definitely on the list. Our Botanical Garden is fantastic. You know, coming here from Portland, we have so many cool like cultural things that are free or like super cheap, like Shakespeare in the Park you were talking about earlier. Like there's just so much, and particularly in the summertime, like all these like free things that you can do.
Concerts.
Concerts in the park
Festival
and all kinds of things. Oh yeah. As my friend calls it, Festival of Lunches, because she just wants to
eat like 17
everything.
Well, if the lines are long there sometimes.
Yeah. So all that's super cool. I think there's like so many good restaurants, like so many good restaurants that are working with local farmers too. Like I know you just had Rick Lewis on the show, and like, you know, he's working with a lot of local farmers. David
He's a farmer himself too. He's a farmer himself too. Rick is. He's got like a farm page on Instagram or something.
I think he's gonna give us some onions. I think so.
Yeah, he's funny. And he said over at Turn.
David Kirkland at Turn is
Yeah.
working with a lot of local farmers and doing cool stuff with Urban Harvest and stuff like that. So there's so much good food. I like have a long list of things I still haven't even gotten to try yet that I want to try, right?
We do too, yeah. Oh, and
What
then we
is
keep
your-
adding to that list. I'm like, we're never going to get through this.
What is your, like, what's a date night spot for you? Do you have like a good dinner spot that you go? I know that I always ask the hard questions at the end and everybody's like, I have so many date night spots.
I finally actually got to eat at Miley recently, and it's so good.
It really is good.
And a place I still want to go that I haven't gotten to go yet is a car.
Oh, yeah.
Like I've heard so much good stuff about there, but I haven't been there yet.
Yeah.
So those are
You like the
those are
Asian
two on
fusion.
that.
You like Asian.
It's my favorite type of
Yeah.
food. It is the best.
And there's so much like I have this.
It never
envision-
misses.
I want to see like, you know, at the peak, you know, in August or whatever, maybe we'll do this for a fundraiser sometime, but like you have like all the local produce and like everyone has like the same kind of basket of produce to work from, but you have like your like kind of more traditional American or like soul food, and then you have like a Asian version and then like a Mexican version.
That's
and just
cool.
like getting to see
And do,
like
like, a little
how
cook-off
people
show or
do
something.
like different.
I love that
Like,
idea.
I mean, I don't even want to be a cook-off show. I just want to taste it all.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like, oh, tomatoes like this and tomatoes like
a
that.
taste block party.
That
or
would be really
something.
fun because then you're like, okay, here's your materials. Everybody has the same materials, but like you might have, you know, Miley doing this Vietnamese amazing ramen or whatever they do. And then you might have like a Ben or Gerard Kraft doing like some type of Italian. Like it's just all these different dishes that all these people could do. And I think that would be a really good way to build awareness and then also just have fun. I mean,
Right.
selfishly have fun and eat. You're like, well, I really want to just
like
be
to
there.
eat.
But that's the thing is like plan events that you want to be at because then other people are going to probably want to be there because you're not the
Yeah.
only one that likes those type of things, you know? So like those farm events, like we didn't know about that, but like that would be a really fun date night for us to just go down there and just hang out and learn, but then also maybe eat some good food, hopefully too.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, I think food's such an easy access to so many of these like larger problems that people can get involved with because like hopefully we all eat every day, you know?
Right. No, seriously.
What's one for the last question? Sorry, I know I keep going. What's one like little piece of advice that you would give? We have a younger listening group. So I would say our main group is between 21 and 35, about 70% of our audience. So what would like be a little tip of advice from your experience of food deserts and the city of St. Louis? Like, do you have anything that you can just like tell people that would like, I mean, I'm sure that's a very hard
Yeah.
question to think about, but like just something that you can leave us with as like a kind of a final thought.
So I don't know if you noticed, but earlier I used the term food apartheid.
Yeah.
So we try to use that term, even though people are more familiar with the term food desert, because desert implies that it's a natural phenomenon, and it's not. There has been historic disinvestment. If you go to North City and then you go to South City, even poverty in both those places within 5 miles from each other look completely different, right? And so food apartheid is recognizing the systems that have created these problems that continue to be reinforced. So I think that's a really important thing to recognize. Even me knowing that, having been in this work and knowing that, I just learned that there are these basically like prohibitions that people can put on leases. So like a grocery store can sell their store to somebody else and say that nobody else could have a grocery store there in the future. A grocery store can own a piece of land and have never built a grocery store on it, but because a grocery store owns it, nobody within a mile of there can build a grocery store.
Wow.
So not only are there all kinds of these larger systemic choices that planners have made or politicians have made, large grocery chains are literally in the business of creating food deserts too. And I think knowing that, just being aware of that there are these very intentional things, and then there are these very unintentional things where this grocery store might not mean for people to not have access to food, but they clearly haven't thought through that if they didn't mean for that to happen. I don't want to say that you should assume that somebody who has made a choice is doing it intentionally. I think we give far too much credit to decision makers that they've thought through things when they haven't. But I think also knowing that those things go in hand is really, really important to be able to understand that larger problem. And as someone who's a systems thinker who's been involved in this work, I still don't see it all the time. There's all kinds of times where I'm like, oh, wow, I was really naive about that, or I didn't realize that. And it's not really like it's not like a, what do you call it? Conspiracy theory type thing,
yeah.
right? It's not a conspiracy necessarily, but it's just like when we have these complex systems that humans have created, and then we have these complex histories, and we have histories of very intentional racism or sexism or what it might be. They all kind of work together to kind of keep that system going.
Mm-hmm.
And so finding a place where you can like have a leverage point to make change, whether that's because, being a farmer or being, having a grocery store or being a small business or just in the choices you make as a consumer, all of those choices are important. None of them by themselves can really make change, but together, when we recognize that and we work together, we can actually make more significant change. And I just love to be a part of an organization that was like by the people for the people. The people who were experiencing food insecurity did something about it.
Yes.
I love that. Their vision from the very beginning was that kind of empowerment for their community and raising people up together. And that gives me goosebumps, right? Those Midtown Mamas,
Shout
our
out
mamas.
to the Midtown Mamas. But no, that's real. That's real because the best things happen when you're not trying to, the only thing you're trying to do is solve an issue. And that's what the best like businesses in the world have been, just solving an issue. But you guys solved an issue just within your community when they started in 2008, and now you're impacting. Like, it would be really cool to look at how many families you've impacted, how many farmers you've impacted. I'm sure you have that data when you send those grants off and stuff like that. But we would love to come out and just visit one day, maybe bring our cameras and do like a cool little like feature and just kind of see what you guys are doing and maybe help show, because the podcast is going to do a lot to help the people that listen and show our followers. But I think if we can get some images and also
Video
even you could share stuff with us too before this comes out next week. But thank you so much for making the time to come out to the show.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much.
This is great.
Other than that, just last but not least, just tell people how to follow you. Are you guys more active on Instagram, Facebook, like all the social tags and
generally stuff? Instagram. We do Facebook too. STL City Greens is how you can follow us on both of those. And as I said before, stlcitygreens.org is our website. So we're posting stuff, we're letting people know. We do how do you freeze all those strawberries that you bought last week thinking that you were going to eat and you didn't eat?
Yes, that is
like
so
that
true. Man, that's such a problem, isn't it? I'm like, get the smaller cartons.
Like, just providing value. And that's what's cool about social is you can kind of do little tidbits here and there and be like, hey, let me give you a tip today, or hey, let me show you this farmer, or let me show you this tip. But any events coming up in June that we should know about?
June 11th is our Meet Your Farmer event. It's on a Sunday afternoon. And you should come check it out and meet the farmers. And I don't know what else we're doing that day, but we'll have some fun things.
Do you have a calendar on the website that people can find the events?
We do. Okay. It's under the Get Involved tab.
Okay. So people can look there and see things.
Awesome. Well, we will see you guys next week on the show, episode 66. Of course, shout out to our friends over at Half Coast Studios for producing a perfect episode for us to put out every single week. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, every single platform. And then, of course, our partners over at the Regional Arts Commission of St. Louis. They're the largest public funder of art programs, and they really just bring a sense of community to St. Louis through these programs. And they support a lot of people, a lot of organizations in St. Louis. So we will see you guys next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Lacy.
Yeah, thank you, Lacy. Appreciate it.
Today they rep St. Louis, yeah. They rep St. Louis. They rep St. Louis.